Hey everyone, it's Jordan from Fish Keeping Made Easy, and today I'm going to give you my top 5 easy to breed fish for beginners. So just a little disclaimer before we start, this list is just a bunch of fish that I've personally bred, or I know people have bred them pretty easily, or they've been bred in shops that I've worked in. There are numerous other fish that are really easy to breed, and I will give some honourable mentions throughout the video. Now, I'm also not going to go into full details on how to breed each fish that I'm talking about, but I will give you any tips and advice that I have. Now, it's important to remember to do your research from various sources before attempting to breed any kind of fish. So the first fish on our list is actually a group of fish which is the dwarf cichlids, so specifically Apistogrammas, crebensis and rams. All of these guys are super easy to breed. They can be bred in species only tanks or in community tanks, but they do get pretty aggressive when it comes to breeding. They all like soft warm water, but don't get too worried if you have a slightly higher pH, as a lot of these guys are bred locally, so they're a little bit hardier and used to a little bit of a higher pH. The key to successfully breeding these guys is having a really well planted tank with caves and other little hiding spots for them to spawn in. I found that coconut shells work perfectly, but they will breed under logs or anything that remotely resembles a cave, or sometimes a rock or a leaf will do depending on the fish. Now, my other bit of advice would be to make sure you definitely have a male and a female. These fish in photos and in your tank are so easy to tell apart, but when they're in a shop they can lose a lot of their colour and a lot will actually be juveniles, so they can be a lot harder to differentiate between. You also get what people refer to as sneaker males. These males basically pretend to be females, so sneak in there and breed with the females, so make sure you also don't have one of those. Making sure the fish are also healthy and have a good diet, so a good mix of frozen and live foods and pelleted foods will make a good base for them to want to breed also. So the next fish on my list is the Geophagus. So these guys require a much larger tank, but are very similar to the dwarf cichlids, and there are a lot of different species of them. Again, they do get aggressive when spawning, so if you have a group of them and then 2 of them end up pairing up, you might have to rehouse the other members of the group to stop the fish from causing any real damage to each other. I wouldn't recommend breeding these guys in a community tank because of this aggression, as they will take it out on all the other fish that are there. From experience, they always kind of take a ridiculous amount of territory when they're breeding as well, so that's another thing to take into consideration. The fish in this footage are pearl cichlids. They're known to spawn on flat rocks, but in this case they used a coconut shell, so Geophagus will definitely utilise any caves in a tank. The reason these guys are so easy to breed is there's no real special requirements other than ensuring the fish are healthy and that you actually have a pair of them, as these guys are kind of difficult to tell apart when juveniles. It's only when they're older and more mature the males will become significantly larger than the females, as my male was about 25 to 30 centimetres and the female was half of that size. So basically have a male and a female, and that's the only difficult part. So the next fish on my list is the bristle-nose plek. So these guys are a great algae and community fish, really easy to tell apart when they're more mature, as males will develop big bristles, although females will develop a few, but just not as intense as the males. Again, super easy to breed. The easiest way I've found is to have one male and a couple of females, add a few of these pleco caves, and before you know it, your tank will be covered in tiny little pleks. So next on my list, we're going to take a step away from fish for a second and talk about cherry shrimp, or Neocaridina. So these guys are super easy to breed. They come in loads of different colours, but if you mix the colours together for breeding, you tend to come out with a sort of browny green colour, and this is known as a wild type. I think they're pretty cool, but if you like them having a nice vibrant colour, then I would stick to just breeding one colour of cherry shrimp. Males and females are not that difficult to tell apart. In the photo here, this is a female. As you can see, it's quite thick and quite brightly coloured. Males tend to be a little bit more smaller and a little bit slimmer, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube and photos online for you to be able to tell the difference between them. I would recommend starting off with maybe 10 or 12, basically just throw them into a well planted tank, and before you know it you'll have loads of little tiny shrimplets. Just make sure you're adding new shrimp all the time so that they don't kind of outbreed themselves. So the last fish on our list are the live bearers, so this includes guppies, endler guppies, platies and swordtails. There are other live bearing fish, but these fish aren't as easy to breed as these guys. So what's my advice with these guys? Well, basically, by the time you've put a male and a female just in the bag to take them home from the fish store, they've probably already bred. Female live bearers can also hold on to a male's sperm for many months, just waiting for the right time to actually reproduce. So even if you don't think you have any males, the females could probably already be pregnant. So really the most difficult part of breeding these guys is just making sure you have some means to give them away, so give them to friends, give them to a fish shop, or have additional tanks to keep them in. So I would recommend only keeping males if you don't want them to breed at all. If you do want them to breed, make sure you have a couple of males and 4 or 5 females, as the males will constantly harass the females all day. So a few honourable mentions. Now, not all of these fish are super easy to breed, but things like killifish can be quite easy to breed if you have a pair. Bettas are quite easy to breed if you follow the correct guidelines for breeding them. Things like barbs, even tetras can be quite easy to breed. It just has to be the right conditions for them. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like it and also make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.